Hello everyone and welcome to this short video in which I'm going to be talking about the 4 main barriers to intercultural communication. So let's get right into it. The first barrier to intercultural communication is uncertainty. We all in our cultural behavior have what is called a cultural script. What a cultural script essentially is that it's a collective programming of how people ought to act in certain circumstances. So for example, when I'm meeting a stranger, I have certain ways of how I should address the stranger. And different cultures have different scripts of how these things work. Now, if I'm communicating with someone from my own culture background, then these things will happen completely automatically, and I will be able to just use these cultural scripts and act in similar ways in these kind of circumstances. But when I'm meeting a stranger from another culture, first of all, I will not know how he or she is going to act. I lose my ability to predict his or her behavior. I lose my ability to interpret his or her behavior. And also, I don't know how I should act in that circumstances. For example, especially here in Iranian family life, they have so many terms that they're using to address each other, and I never know what term is the right one because I'm not familiar with this particular cultural script. And therefore, I'm constantly confused as to how to address these people. Now, the second barrier to intercultural communication is the different expectations that people from different cultures have. So for example, let's just imagine an imaginary couple where one of the partners is from Europe and the other partner is from Iran. Now, it is about this question of introducing each other to each other's parents. So, for example, the parents of the Iranian daughter or son will expect him or her to get married as soon as possible because this idea of being a boyfriend or a girlfriend is not very a common part of that culture. And once people are really falling in love with each other, the expectation then is that they should go towards the steps for marriage quite quickly and to introduce each other's families to each other as soon as possible, obviously. Now, from the other side, from the European side, maybe this expectation would be exactly the opposite. The parents would say, hey, you only know her for 6 months or you only know him for 1 year. Isn't that way too early to get married? I mean, how do you know that this is the right person for you? How do you know that you can be together for the long term? You should wait and you should get to know each other better. And also we should take our time with meeting the other family because that means much more commitment. So therefore the expectations are completely different. And this brings us exactly to the third barrier of intercultural communication, which is value clashes. Now let's imagine that our couple is already married and they're leading their day-to-day lives. So perhaps the Iranian, let's say the wife is Iranian and the husband is European. Let's say that the wife has a very strong value on family, whereas the husband has a very strong value on independence. Now, what's going to happen is that the wife is going to be wanting to spend a lot of time together, most of the spare time together between each other and also with potentially their children. Whereas perhaps the husband is going to say, okay, I want to spend time together, but I also want to have a lot of my own independence and I want to spend a lot of time with my friends, with my family. I want to go travel. I want to see all these things. And this leads to value clashes. Now, the only way to resolve this situation is to focus on common ground. All human beings have needs, and a lot of these needs are in common, and therefore by focusing on commonalities and by looking at similar approaches to things, often these value clashes can be resolved. And this brings us to the fourth barrier to intercultural communication, which is different communication styles. So let's take another example. For example, a Japanese candidate for a job wants to apply to a Western company, right? According to the Japanese culture, when he is in the job interview, because the interviewer is superior to him within that ranking system, he should then avoid eye contact. He should look slightly to the ground in order to show his humbleness, and this is going to be a positive feature in the Japanese culture. But in the Western culture, not looking into another person's eyes and looking down is going to be perceived as a lack of self-confidence, and therefore it's going to have negative consequences for the Japanese candidate. Even in most circumstances, if the interviewer is aware of this fact, he will still judge the other person according to his own standards, and this is quite a big challenge. To take another example from a similar situation from the same potential candidate is that he will only answer questions if he's asked any questions, because in this way again he will show that he's humble and that he's willing to listen to the other side, and this makes him a good candidate according to his own cultural standards. However, the European interviewer might perceive this as a lack of interest in the company, as a lack of being willing to put in your own effort. Yes, as a lack of willingness to ask these questions, and therefore it's going to have negative consequences again. Now, these different communication styles are going to lead to a lot of challenges which both parties will have to face. So now what I want you to do is to take all these 4 barriers and to think about examples that you had in your own life in which you were facing similar situations. And then to think about this question of what could you have done differently in these circumstances in order to resolve these dilemmas. So thanks for listening and have a good time. Bye-bye.